about what took us from intermediate people to like considering ourselves wealth builders? Because I can think of some pretty specific things we started to do. So what do you guys think? Marilee, what's something you did?
So what I did is I started to diversify. So I bought, I had always invested in the stock market, but I started to look at real estate. So I bought a rental property for rental income. And I started to diversify the types of accounts that I was investing in. So at the beginning, it was mostly retirement. And then it became, helping my kids with an education fund and also non-registered investing. So just adding different types of accounts. So where there were more moving parts, but there was also more different income streams. So that really started to make me feel like an investor. So I identified as an investor. I was reading, I had worked in the industry. I was helping clients with this, but it had a different meaning when I was doing it for myself. And I also started to think more about the future. So I started to look at my estate planning, making sure that my will, my beneficiary designations met, what my wishes were if something happened. Before I didn't have a lot of money. That was never, the number one consideration. But I started to shift to planning for those types of decisions as well.
When I started making more money, I right away just kind of knew somehow, I guess from my childhood and raising, that I needed to invest in the stock market, but I had never done it before. We were definitely living paycheck to paycheck. I was a half-time teacher. My husband was a teacher. And then suddenly I was making some more money, and all I knew to do was to talk to a relative and find a financial advisor that could invest the money for me. I knew I needed to do something with this extra money, but that's all I knew. And so I did that for probably about a year to a year and a half. Before I found Andrew Helm's book, Millionaire Teacher. And that book taught me that I could actually invest on my own. I was paying this guy 2-point-something% of all my money every single day, right? And that was a huge aha moment for me. Obviously, I didn't go from him to investing on my own overnight. I did a lot of reading, a lot of learning, but I all of a sudden had a focus, like, okay, I can do this myself. This teacher also did this himself, and I can learn how to do it. And then it's going to feel scary, and it was very scary, but I took that over, and that was really where I started. Now, is it the perfect way? No. Like later I learned about IRAs and fully funding those and things like that, right? Like in theory, I should have done those first. And then like a regular brokerage account. I was also overseas, and so that complicates things or gives you less or different options. But for me, it was just that, and that's okay. I knew I needed to invest this money, so I gave it to somebody else until I realized I could do this myself. So that's really where I transitioned into living paycheck to paycheck to, okay, I'm going to invest some more money. And we can talk to Jen about how we make more money, because later in my career, after I've been investing for a little while, we also got into real estate, but also like some side gigs. Actually, early in my career, Jen and I met at a school here in Parker, Colorado, and she was teaching graduate level and undergrad level classes at the University of Phoenix. And I heard about that, and I was a part-time teacher and young kids. And I was like, oh my God, that's like the perfect side gig, because it's like 6 to 10 p.m. When the kids are asleep already. So I actually learned from you, Jen, how to get my first side gig to make a little extra money. Well, I kept my part-time teaching job because that's all I really wanted during the days.
I think, so this side gigs are so interesting, right? So I was thinking about this. It must have been like a year ago. I was working on like my resume and I was thinking about things. And I was like, I have had 2 jobs for, there was a recent stretch where we were moving a lot, but the whole time I was teaching, basically, I had 2 jobs. But at one point, those 2 jobs were literally keeping me afloat, like closing the gap between paychecks and because, as I've shared before, I was having to put a chunk of money every month towards my debt. So even if I just paid the minimum payment, that was still a chunk of money, right? So my 2 jobs and my side hustles were really just keeping me afloat and like letting me still sort of enjoy life, and not like, I used to joke about eating top ramen and watching TV, and that was like the only things I could do because I had money for nothing else. But then as you start to get more into that intermediate thing, as you start to get that debt either paid off or really under control, the side hustles become a whole different thing, right? Now a side hustle or a side gig or what, like there's lots of terms I think flying around right now for them. Now I don't think of them like that, like the way I used to. I kind of think of them as now an additional stream of income. So the hustle to me was like hustling to keep myself afloat. And now I'm like, oh, this extra job is like an additional income stream. So what am I going to do with this income stream? I started to think about that money coming in a whole different mindset. And I attended, so I will say this, and then I'm going to like throw out a little like asterisk. We attended like a wealth building seminar. The one we attended I thought was really well done. It did not, the asterisk is, do not attend a seminar or take advice. This is strong words I'm choosing, I hear myself. That just tells you there's only one right way to do things. So if you go to a seminar and the person says the only way to live is this, and this, and then you walk away feeling like, oh God, I have to do these things, then I personally think that is not a good wealth building seminar or wealth building information. What they should be doing is sharing with you lots of different options, because people build wealth in lots of different ways, and we have to figure out what works well for us. So we attended one that we just had the opportunity to go to. And what I loved about it is it was like all these different very successful people sharing what their wealth building strategy was. So you could sort of take bits and pieces from each person. There wasn't like a right or wrong way to do it. And that's when we also started to think about creating additional streams of income for ourselves outside of our regular jobs. So that's when we also own a rental property. All 3 of us own rental properties. So that's when we bought ours, because investing in real estate made sense to us. And that's when I started. In that seminar, somebody said to become, I can't remember what term they used, but like financially free. A lot of those people have like 7 streams of income, and 7 seems huge. But when you start to think about like my investment income, my regular job, my rental property, this side gig I do, like once a month I do this, it starts to make sense to you, and you really think about that money in a different way, the money coming in, than you did at the different levels of kind of financial literacy.
Completely agree. That multiple stream of income, once I realized that I could build, dividends and capital gains and then short-term rental, it was like, okay, this makes so much sense. And the statistics are really wild. The wealthiest people definitely don't only have one stream of income. There's no doubt about that. And then there's like the conversation about how passive it is, how much you're trading time for money, or it's happening while you sleep, right? But it's a really, for me, a fun place to be. Like to be able to like dream up what you want to do and then figure out a way to do it. We are living in the best time ever for side gigs. The internet is our oyster, right? Like a lot of people, it takes a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it's also an opportunity that a lot of us have, pretty equal access to these days, to trying to build something online with social media and that kind of thing as well. So completely agree.
Well, and that's something we're all doing. We're all pursuing a business. So that's another great way to build wealth. When I worked in the investment space, entrepreneurs were some of the wealthiest clients. They were able to build their wealth through growing a business and doing some additional planning, like tax planning and trust structures and things like that. So it definitely opens up more wealth building opportunities to have a business. But as Sybil shared, it is not for the faint of heart, and it can be a lot of work to get things set up. So you do have to consider how much time and energy you want to put into any investments that you make.
Yeah, there's not really a get rich overnight scheme, in my opinion. If it's advertised that way, it might be too good to be true, right? Like, I'm sure it happens to some people. There are lotto winners and different people that get invited into business opportunities that might happen. But for the most of us, it really isn't for the faint of heart. You really got to decide it's a passion area, and you're gonna, like wealth building, play the long game, right? You need to go after it and do it for a while. But what an exciting place to be. I mean, authoring my first book, and now I've got a journal out. Like, no, is it making me a ton of money? No. But is it building credibility? Is it building my audience? Is it building my ideas and my passions and my joy and my ikigai? Absolutely. And it's taking me places. And so it's a pretty cool place to be, for sure. So remember, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us your thoughts and questions, and be sure to like and subscribe our podcast. We're so glad that you're here and have been listening. We look forward to chatting with you more, and we don't want you to miss any episodes. So please follow along and let us know any questions you have as well, because we would love to answer them right here on our podcast. Take care.